Hello, Soberinos, and welcome to this week's Friday Fix, where today I'm talking to you about the importance of planning and preparation in advance of upcoming situations that you might find challenging. And I'm also going to be introducing you to a tool, a technique that really helps to grow your confidence and to empower you to get through those challenging situations successfully sober. Now, I have made some notes here because there's quite a lot I want to get through and I want to make sure that I remember everything. So I will be, every now and then, I'll be checking down at my notes. So the first thing that it's worth mentioning is that there are all sorts of different ways we can plan and prepare in advance. And the reason it's important to plan and prepare in advance is because our unconscious minds have developed a deeply ingrained and embedded pattern of behavior. Our unconscious minds have developed this pattern where drink is the default. Drinking is the default behavior, whether it's in response to anxiety, whether it's in response to joy, whether it's in response to boredom, whether it's in response to a particular time of day, a particular emotion, a person. There are all sorts of things which trigger our unconscious minds to leap in to the automated pattern that it's created for ourselves. And because that's happening all automatically and at an unconscious level, we're not really thinking about it. We're not really controlling it. We're certainly not always conscious of when it's happening. And so when there's a situation coming up that we're feeling anxious about or worried about, or we think, oh, that's going to be a real struggle to do that sober, it's really important to plan and prepare in advance so that we can set ourselves up for success, so that we're not taken by surprise by anything that could knock us off our feet and set us back down a road that we don't want to go down. So planning and preparing in advance is the real key to navigating our new sober lives successfully, powerfully, confidently, and in control. So I can't stress that enough. Planning and preparation in advance is really, really key. Now, there are all sorts of ways we can do this. We can do this by thinking ahead to the event and deciding what we're going to say to people. We can decide what we're going to drink instead of alcohol. We can decide what our escape routes are. We can decide what we're going to do if we are asked about why we're not drinking, what we're going to respond. There are all sorts of things we can do to prepare in advance. We can also prepare in advance by deciding whether the thing is too much for us or not, whether we're actually up for it or whether we need to hide away from it for now. So we can do a little bit of thinking in advance and prepare for it in kind of practical ways. We can also do things like rehearse, actually out loud in front of a mirror, the kinds of things we're going to say to people if they put us under pressure to drink or if they ask us why we're not drinking. We might want to give ourselves a little bit of confidence by rehearsing these kinds of things in front of a mirror so that we go super confident and super prepared. But there is one thing above all others, which is the best thing you can do for yourself. If you have an upcoming situation that you're imagining could be a struggle for you. Now, that could be something as simple as just navigating the weekend sober on your own at home. It could be a Friday evening in front of the TV. You've always done that with a drink in your hand, and now you're learning to do it sober. Could be something as simple as that. Or it could be something as big as going out to some kind of social event, a party, a wedding. Could be a meal out. It could be a gathering with family and friends. It could be something as big as a holiday. Or it could be something really simple like meeting up with a person and usually your relationship with this person is built around drinking. Whatever the upcoming situation is, no matter how simple, no matter how complex, no matter how big, no matter how small, this technique, this way of preparing in advance for it is going to be the most empowering thing you can do for yourself. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The first thing I want to say is that our brains find it really difficult to differentiate between a remembered event and an imagined event. There's something really complicated that goes on within the neurological structures within our brains that mean that our brain can't really tell the difference between something that's remembered and real and something that we're imagining. I'm not going to bore you with all of the neuroscience around that because I don't fully understand it myself. But the research is showing quite interesting results that when we remember something and when we imagine something, it's using the same neurological channels and the same neurological processes, and it's all happening in the same parts of our brains. So we don't really know the difference between something that's real and something that's imagined. At least the unconscious part of our minds doesn't know the difference. So when we are imagining what an event is going to be like when we do it sober, our brain kind of thinks that that's the reality, that that's real in some way, that that's a predictor of what's going to happen. Every time we imagine something happening, we're kind of telling our brain that that is what we can predict. That's going to be the reality. And so whatever we're imagining is more likely to come true. I'll give you an example of that. So if, for instance, I was having a job interview, I had a job interview coming up. And if I started to imagine, because we have a tendency, don't we, to imagine the worst. At least some of us, or in fact, most of us probably do this. We have a tendency to imagine the bad stuff happening. So if I was going to a job interview, my unconscious and my unconscious reaction to that might be to imagine going blank when the interviewers ask me a question. I might imagine not being able to answer a question. I might imagine that the interviewers might not like me. I might imagine being extremely nervous and being so nervous and so panicked that I just go blank and I can't perform at my best. I might imagine all of these negative things happening in advance of even going for the interview. And so, of course, what that does, because my brain can't really tell the difference between something that's real or remembered and something that's imagined, it's going to use my imaginings as a predictor of reality. And so it's more likely to create that very reality. So if I'm imagining all of that bad stuff happening at the interview, I'm more likely to walk into the interview behaving in a way that is a result of everything I've imagined. So if I've imagined going blank, if I've imagined losing my memory, if I've imagined not getting the answers right, if I've imagined not performing at my best, if I've imagined feeling panicked and nervous in front of this row of interviewers who don't like me, I'm much more likely to go into that interview feeling nervous, feeling panicked, going blank. And actually, everything that I've imagined has become a rehearsal for that very reality. So I'm more likely to bring about that reality. And the note that I've made for myself here is when we rehearse the bad stuff is more likely to happen. And that's exactly what our unconscious minds do. And they do it without us really being in control of it. They do it without us even thinking about it. We're on automated patterns of behavior with our brains. So we're more likely to just automatically go into rehearsing all the bad stuff, imagining all the bad stuff, and then that becomes the reality that we're creating. When I think about the first wedding I went to, in fact, I think it's the only wedding I've been to since I've been sober, but the first wedding I went to sober, I imagined feeling bored. I imagined being boring. This was before I'd actually got there. I was imagining it would be a really boring event. I was imagining that I would just be really dull and boring and I wouldn't have a good time and I wouldn't be able to socialize with people. I wouldn't be able to interact with people. I wouldn't be any fun. I was imagining that the people around me, because I knew vaguely the people whose wedding it was, and I imagined the people around me that I just wouldn't get on with them. We wouldn't have anything in common. I imagined that it would be a real struggle, that it was going to be hours and hours and hours of awkwardness of me sitting at a table with other people that I didn't know and didn't get on with. I imagined that all of the wine was going to be on the table and I was just going to sit there wanting a drink and not being able to have one, and that I was going to be miserable. I imagined all of that stuff. Now, if you imagine all of that stuff, you get to the wedding itself. I got to the wedding itself and, it kind of all comes true. That's exactly what happens because that's the way you've imagined it. So that's a really good example of how this stuff works. Now, the opposite side to that is when we consciously decide and make ourselves imagine good stuff happening and imagining us being successful, imagining ourselves being confident, imagining ourselves sailing effortlessly through these events and these struggles, successfully sober, we actually make that reality happen instead. So what have I written here? Yeah, when we consciously imagine or rehearse good stuff, we rehearse success, we actually help our minds predict that, and we help our minds to create that reality. So it's more likely to happen. And because our minds are automatically, unconsciously rehearsing the bad stuff, because that's the pattern that we've got into, we need to pay conscious attention to imagining and rehearsing the good stuff in order to make that more likely to happen. So if you've got an upcoming situation that you're worried about that could be a struggle for you to deal with sober, it's really important as part of your planning and preparation in advance to consciously make an effort to imagine success, to imagine yourself confidently and easily sailing through this event successfully sober. So I'm going to give you an example of that. The first party I went to sober, and I remember this really, really well, and I think I've probably mentioned it in other blogs and vlogs that I've done, I did consciously and purposefully sit down and actually imagine myself at this event, navigating this event successfully and confidently sober. And I imagined that instead of going into this event nervous, anxious, worried that I was going to be boring, worried that everyone else was going to be bored with me, that I was going to be bored at the event, that I wouldn't have anything in common, instead of all that stuff that I imagined at the wedding I described, I imagined instead that I would go in curious. I would go to this event curious about how it was going to be different sober than how it would have been if I was drinking. I imagined that I was going to go to this party and I was going to really pay attention to the number of other people who weren't drinking, just so that I could gain some confidence and I could gain a sense of, well, I'm not the only one. And actually, just because somebody isn't drinking doesn't mean that they've got a problem. And that made myself feel better. So I imagined myself getting curious at this event. I imagined myself smiling. I imagined myself asking other people questions and getting to know them. I imagined that other people might ask me about why I wasn't drinking, and I imagined myself giving really confident, well-rehearsed responses to those questions. I imagined myself drinking non-alcoholic drinks that I'd brought with me in my bag. I imagined myself leaving the party early because I'd pre-prepared an excuse and an escape route. So I knew I only had a limited amount of time at this party. So I'd pre-prepared in that way. And I'd imagined myself leaving with a smile on my face. I imagined myself driving home in the car, laughing about some of the things that had gone on at the party. I even imagined myself the next morning waking up in bed and feeling great because I'd been successful. So I imagined myself being really confident, really successful, being really curious, being really engaged at this party sober. And lo and behold, that's what actually happened, because what we imagine becomes the reality that we create. So when we rehearse the good stuff, we are more likely to make that happen. There is a specific technique that helps you to do this. And this specific technique is called mental rehearsal. And it's something that successful athletes do all the time. It's something that successful business people and entrepreneurs do all the time. It's something that successful politicians do. It's something that successful teachers and educators and therapists do. This is a well-known technique, and it's taught differently in different arenas, in different situations. But there is one way of teaching this technique that really works, and it really works well. And so I just want to introduce you to the concept of this technique, mental rehearsal, and how important it is for anything in life, not just learning to live your life successfully sober and to navigate upcoming events which could be challenging for you, but also once you are sailing through life successfully sober and it's become easy, it's become a breeze, and you don't need to think about it anymore, you can use this technique in other areas of your life as well. So whether it's job interviews, whether it's dealing with a difficult person, or a difficult relationship that you might have, whether it's a driving test, whatever it is in life that you want to do and you want to do it successfully, this is a great technique to help you to do that. So let me check what I wanted to say about this. Oh yeah, I remember when I first learned this technique, and this is how powerful it is. I used to have a really severe spider phobia. Really, really bad. And I'm sure some of you can relate to this. I remember being on a training day and learning about this mental rehearsal technique for the first time. And I've done lots with this technique since then, but this was the first time that I'd ever learned about it or used it. And I was with a little group. I was in a little group of people. I think there were 3 of us or maybe 4 of us. And we had to talk each other through this technique. And one of the people in my group was kind of doing it on me. So she was sort of talking me through it, and I was doing it. And the situation I'd chosen to practice this technique on was, I knew that at home there was a spider underneath the toilet on the wall. I'd seen in my bathroom, I'd seen the spider on the wall underneath the toilet, so between the toilet and the sink. And this spider had been bugging me. It wasn't a massive spider, but it was big enough to cause me concern. And there was no way I was going near this spider. And as I was working my way through this mental rehearsal technique, one of the things we had to do was to kind of choose a role model, somebody that we could imagine doing the thing that we wanted to do successfully. Choosing a role model that we could imagine easily and confidently doing this thing successfully. So I imagined my partner, because he dealt with all of the spiders in our household. I imagined him getting a piece of toilet tissue, and I imagined him putting that piece of toilet tissue gently around that spider, picking it up and then taking it outside and dropping it down. That was part of the technique. We had to imagine somebody else doing the thing that we wanted to do. So I imagined him doing it, and then I followed the rest of the technique. And basically what happened was, the first thing I did when I got home was I went into the bathroom, I got a piece of toilet tissue, I gently encased the spider in the toilet tissue. I walked outside and I released the spider into the wild. Now, that was something before that day I never in a million years could have imagined myself doing. But this mental rehearsal technique, in the way that I teach it, is phenomenally powerful. It can enable you to rehearse success with any situation that you've got coming up and to get through it successfully. Now, I think, in fact, I know that if you are in the guidance program, for those of you who don't know, the guidance program is accessible when you have a guidance membership. If you go to the Go Get Sober website, you will see that there are different memberships available. If you have a guidance membership on the Go Get Sober website, you can access something called the guidance program. And the guidance program is this massive resource full of tools, full of techniques, like this mental rehearsal technique, that will help you to get successfully, confidently, and easily sober, far more easily and effortlessly than you ever could have imagined possible. And in module 1, it's actually a structured coaching program that's split into modules and steps. And in module 1, step 2 is titled Imagine the Difference. And step 2 introduces you to this mental rehearsal technique that I've just been talking about. So if you want to find out more and you are already a guidance member, you can get yourself along to the guidance program on the website. You can go to module 1, step 2, and you will find there all this information about the mental rehearsal technique, and it will talk you through how to do it. But also, more than that, now hold on, let me just think carefully about my dates here. The next Super Sober Spring 2022 weekly workshop, the next one coming up, which is actually Friday the 15th of April, is going to be all about this Imagine the Difference technique, this mental rehearsal technique. And what I'm going to be doing is talking you through module 1, step 2, and talking you through this mental rehearsal technique. So it's a really good opportunity for those of you who haven't already used it, who want to get a bit more confident with using it, to actually join me as I talk you through how to use it. We'll do some practicing and you will go away from that workshop absolutely pumped up, motivated, ready to go, confident in how to approach an upcoming situation that you previously thought would have been a bit of a struggle or a bit of a challenge, just like I did with learning how to deal with the spider. Now, whether that's a situation you want to deal with confidently, sober, or whether that's completely unrelated to being sober, it doesn't matter, it's up to you. But when you come to that weekly workshop, I will guide you through how to use this mental rehearsal technique. I will teach you how to use it so that you go away empowered, and that you will go away being able to transform any area of your life that you want to transform. So I encourage you, if you are not already signed up to the weekly workshops or to the guidance program, I encourage you to get to the Go Get Sober website, sign yourself up for a membership, and then send me an email, jo@gogetsober.com, to let me know you'd like to join me for the weekly workshops, and I will talk you through a lot of these techniques. And the weekly workshops aren't just an opportunity to learn about these techniques, but they are also a fantastic opportunity to connect with one another, to put faces to names, to share our stories, to gain confidence and strength, camaraderie and support from one another. So they're a really fantastic opportunity to set yourself up for success. That's what we do here at Go Get Sober. We set each other up for success. So if you're not already there and you want to be there, send me an email, jo@gogetsober.com, and come and join us on the weekly workshops. Now, there's a slight change to the schedule of the weekly workshops. I did say they would be every Thursday this month, but I've had to change that around because of other commitments. So the next weekly workshop will be all about this mental rehearsal technique. It will be sharing and talking you through, walking you through the Imagine the Difference technique. And it will be on Friday, the 15th of April at 7 p.m. UK time. So that is UTC time. You need a time converter to turn that into whatever time it is where you are in the world. And that's actually Good Friday. So what a fabulous way to celebrate and to bring in, if you're someone that celebrates Easter, what a fabulous way to celebrate Easter, to give yourself this tool, this skill. So I will look forward to seeing you there. If you have any questions at all about that, pop them in the comments below and I will respond to you. But otherwise, email me at jo@gogetsober.com and I will respond to your emails. I will look forward to catching up with you in tomorrow's Saturday share. But in the meantime, let's go get sober together. Bye.